Imagine a Bible unlike the one you know, one that holds some of the most astonishing revelations in Christian history. Truths so profound that they were hidden away for centuries, kept from the world. This isn't the familiar Bible with 66 books found in most Christian traditions. No, this one has 88 books, including texts that were banned, suppressed, and deemed too dangerous by early church leaders. But why? What if I told you that these forbidden books contain secrets about fallen angels, the Nephilim, and end-time prophecies unlike anything you've ever heard? What if they reveal hidden knowledge about the cosmic battle between good and evil, the intricate hierarchies of heaven, and the role of angels and demons in shaping humanity's destiny? Today, we're uncovering the lost books of the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, a collection filled with mysteries that have remained unknown to most of the Christian world for centuries. But why were these texts banned? What was so unsettling about them that Western church leaders felt the need to remove them from the Bible we know today? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand the real reasons these books were considered so dangerous, and the shocking revelations they contain that could completely change how you see the Bible. Let's start with this. While most Christians are familiar with the Christian Standard Bible or the King James Bible, both containing 66 books, 39 in the Old Testament and 27 in the New Testament, the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible holds an astonishing 88 books. That's right, 22 additional books. And these aren't just footnotes or commentaries. They are full sacred texts that were once deeply revered, but later erased from mainstream Christianity. Many of these books were widely used by early Jewish and Christian communities for centuries, filled with prophecies, cosmic visions, and ancient stories you won't find anywhere else. But after the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, early church authorities deemed them too mystical, too controversial, or too closely tied to Jewish traditions, leading to their exclusion. Ethiopia's connection to the Bible runs far deeper than most people realize. Long before European colonization, and even before Christianity spread through the Roman Empire, the ancient kingdom of Ethiopia had already forged a spiritual bond with the Bible. Ethiopian Christianity traces its roots all the way back to the 4th century AD, when the powerful kingdom of Aksum officially embraced Christianity as its state religion. This makes Ethiopia one of the very first nations in the world to adopt Christianity, centuries before many Western countries. From that moment on, the Bible, written in Ge'ez, an ancient Ethiopian language, became the heart of Ethiopian religious life. But Ethiopia's ties to biblical history likely go even further, beyond Christianity itself. According to Ethiopian tradition, this connection begins with the Queen of Sheba, who traveled from Ethiopia to visit King Solomon in Jerusalem around the 10th century BC. While this visit is only briefly mentioned in the Western Bible, Ethiopian tradition expands the story dramatically. The Ethiopian Bible even tells us that the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon had a son, Menelik I, who would go on to become the first emperor of Ethiopia. Now, here's where it gets even more fascinating. Menelik is said to have taken the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred chest containing the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments, back to Ethiopia. To Ethiopians, this wasn't just a historical event. It was a divine mission. According to their belief, Ethiopia was chosen by God to be the protector of the Ark of the Covenant, forever linking the nation's spiritual destiny to the sacred history of Israel. With such a deep-rooted connection to biblical lore, it's no surprise that Ethiopia became a spiritual stronghold, one of the earliest Christian nations and the guardian of ancient texts that other Christian traditions eventually rejected. Unlike much of the Western world, Ethiopia remained untouched by European influence for centuries, preserving these sacred books within its Orthodox Bible. While many of these texts disappeared from Western Christian traditions, They remained an essential part of Ethiopian religious life. But this raises an intriguing question. Why were these books removed from the Standard Bible? The reasons are as complex as they are revealing. Some of these books were banned because they contained ideas considered too mystical or too controversial. Take the Book of Enoch, for example, a text that speaks of celestial beings, fallen angels, and the Nephilim, mysterious giants said to be the offspring of humans and angels. These apocalyptic visions reveal the secrets of heaven and hell, the origins of sin, and God's final judgment, ideas that were deemed too dangerous for the early church to embrace. Other books were excluded because they stayed too closely tied to Judaism. Texts like Jubilees and Maccabees emphasize strict Jewish laws such as the Sabbath, dietary restrictions, and circumcision, at a time when the early Christian church was working hard to separate itself from Judaism. These writings were seen as a challenge to the emerging Christian identity, leading to their eventual removal from the Western biblical canon. Some of these books were also seen as a challenge to orthodoxy, the unified doctrine that early church leaders were working hard to establish. They feared that keeping these texts in the Bible could lead to conflicting interpretations of theology, particularly regarding angels, the afterlife, and God's divine judgment. If different groups began reading and interpreting these books in their own way, it could open the door to divisions or even heresies within the early church. But there's an even deeper layer to this story. During the colonial era, when European powers, especially Italy, sought to control Ethiopia, the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible itself became a target. Colonial rulers saw it as more than just a religious text. They saw it as a symbol of Ethiopian resistance. Its unique content, which spiritually connected Ethiopia to Israel and early Christianity, stood in direct opposition to European religious and cultural dominance. By marginalizing the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, colonial forces aimed to weaken Ethiopia's spiritual independence and impose Western religious traditions. This is more than just history. It's a story of hidden truths and suppressed knowledge. If you're fascinated by the secrets of the Bible, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with anyone ready to dive deeper into these lost texts. To truly understand why the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible includes so many books that were excluded from the standard Christian Bible, we first need to explore Ethiopia's unique place in biblical history. Let's go back to the 4th century, an era when much of the world had yet to fully embrace Christianity. In the midst of this, the Kingdom of Aksum, a thriving and powerful civilization in what is now modern-day Ethiopia, became one of the first nations in history to officially adopt Christianity as its state religion. This defining moment shaped Ethiopia's identity and established it as one of the oldest continuously Christian countries on earth. But how did this happen? Unlike many other regions, Ethiopia didn't receive Christianity through European missionaries. Instead, Ethiopian tradition traces its Christian roots all the way back to the Apostle Philip and the conversion of the Ethiopian eunuch, as recorded in Acts 8:26-40. This royal official, after being baptized by Philip, returned to Ethiopia and planted the seeds of the Christian faith. Over time, what started as a small movement grew into a national religion. By the 4th century, Christianity had officially taken root through the influence of the Coptic Church of Alexandria, leading to the translation of the Bible into Ge'ez, the sacred Ethiopian language. This unique spiritual legacy set Ethiopia apart from the rest of Christendom. While the Roman Empire and Western churches debated which books should be included in the Bible, Ethiopia remained independent, preserving a broader collection of sacred texts. The Ethiopian Orthodox Bible is the largest and most comprehensive biblical canon in any Christian tradition. It includes books that were rejected or lost by other Christian communities, texts that provide deeper insights into ancient Jewish and Christian beliefs. But Ethiopia's biblical connection isn't just about Christianity. It reaches back to the very foundations of biblical history. To fully grasp this, we must look beyond the early church and go back 1,000 years before Christ, to the time of King Solomon and the legendary Queen of Sheba. The Queen of Sheba is a mysterious figure mentioned in the Bible in 1 Kings 10 and 2 Chronicles 9. The Western Bible tells us that she traveled from a distant land to test Solomon's wisdom. However, Ethiopian tradition expands on this story in ways that reshape biblical history. According to the Kebra Nagast, an ancient Ethiopian text considered central to the nation's identity, the Queen of Sheba, known in Ethiopia as Makeda, did more than visit Solomon. She bore him a son, Menelik, who would become the first emperor of Ethiopia. But the most extraordinary part of this story is what Menelik is said to have brought back from Jerusalem, the Ark of the Covenant itself. Yes, the very chest that contained the 10 Commandments, the most sacred artifact in biblical history. Ethiopian tradition holds that God willed the Ark to be taken to Ethiopia, where it has been guarded for centuries in a chapel in Aksum. This belief isn't just a legend for Ethiopians, it's a foundational part of their national and religious identity. The presence of the Ark in Ethiopia is seen as a divine mission, linking Ethiopia directly to Israel's spiritual destiny. For Ethiopian Christians, their nation isn't on the fringes of biblical history, it's at the center of it. They see themselves as protectors of God's covenant, chosen to safeguard the Ark and the ancient truths of the Bible. While Western Christianity was busy narrowing down the biblical canon, Ethiopia was preserving the full spectrum of early Christian and Jewish writings. Due to Ethiopia's relative isolation from Europe, it was able to resist the pressure to conform to the Council of Nicaea's decisions about which books would be considered scripture. Held in 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea was a defining moment for Christianity in the Roman Empire, bringing church leaders together to establish core doctrines and determine which texts would be included in the Bible. The Western Church began shaping a canon that excluded books deemed too Jewish, too mystical, or too speculative. Texts like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and the Maccabees were set aside for their deep focus on angelic realms or strict Jewish traditions. But Ethiopia remained untouched by these changes, staying true to its Coptic Christian roots and preserving a much broader collection of sacred writings. This is why the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible not only contains the 66 books found in the standard Christian Bible, but also 22 additional texts that were banned or omitted by Western Christianity. Ethiopia became a stronghold of ancient traditions, safeguarding scriptures that were lost to much of the Christian world. The Ethiopian Orthodox Bible stands apart as a living testament to a faith that remained rooted in its early origins, unaffected by the theological and political debates that shaped the Western canon. The continued inclusion of these once-banned texts isn't just a historical anomaly, it's a powerful reminder that Christianity once had many perspectives on what should be considered sacred scripture. Many of the books excluded by the Western Church still hold profound spiritual significance today. For example, the Book of Enoch vividly describes fallen angels, their interactions with humanity, and their ultimate judgment, shaping early Christian ideas about evil and the end times. The Book of Jubilees, on the other hand, offers a unique Jewish retelling of biblical history, revealing new insights into the lives of the patriarchs and the role of angelic beings in guiding humanity. These texts provide a window into a lost chapter of Christian history, a time when theological ideas were still evolving and the boundaries of orthodoxy were still being debated. For Ethiopia, these books were never considered forbidden. They have always been an integral part of its religious life, revered alongside the well-known texts of the Old and New Testaments. But why were they banned elsewhere? What made these writings so controversial that the Western Church decided they did not belong in the Bible? The answers are as intriguing as they are complex, intertwining theological concerns with deep political and cultural struggles. In this section, we'll uncover the real reasons why these books were set aside by early Christian leaders and why Ethiopia chose to preserve them. One of the main reasons for their exclusion lies in their deeply mystical content, their exploration of spiritual realms, angelic hierarchies, and divine interactions with humanity. Many of these banned texts, such as the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees, are rich with esoteric themes that delve into celestial mysteries and the unseen forces shaping the world. Take the Book of Enoch, for example. It provides a striking account of the Watchers, fallen angels who descended to earth, mingled with humans, and introduced corruption through their offspring, the Nephilim. These rebellious angels not only defied God, but they also revealed forbidden knowledge to humanity, including the secrets of warfare, magic, and astrology. This kind of narrative is a far cry from the more direct message of salvation found in the Western Bible. After the Council of Nicaea, in 325 AD, the Western Church became increasingly wary of these speculative teachings. Church leaders feared that too much focus on angels, cosmic conflicts, and apocalyptic visions might lead believers away from the central message of Christ's life, death, and resurrection. They saw these mystical interpretations as potential distractions, concepts that could sow confusion and steer people towards speculative theology rather than faith in Jesus. Books like Enoch, once widely read among early Christian communities, including the Essenes, a Jewish sect that greatly influenced early Christian thought, were eventually dismissed by the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. Their detailed accounts of spiritual battles and angelic hierarchies were considered too speculative, too detached from the practical teachings of the faith. Ethiopia, however, took a different approach. Instead of seeing these books as distractions, Ethiopian Christianity embraced them as essential to understanding the ongoing spiritual struggle between good and evil. To Ethiopian Christians, these texts were not just ancient stories. They were revelations about the unseen world, offering profound insights into the mysteries of God's creation and the forces at work behind the scenes of human history. Another major reason these books were banned is their strong connection to Jewish traditions. Texts like the Book of Jubilees and the Maccabees emphasize strict adherence to Jewish laws, such as observing the Sabbath, circumcision, and dietary restrictions, at a time when Christianity was still emerging from its Jewish roots. These books reflect a worldview where following the Mosaic law was seen as essential to maintaining a covenant with God. Take the Book of Jubilees, also called Little Genesis. It retells biblical history from creation to the giving of the law at Mount Sinai, but goes even further than Genesis and Exodus. It stresses the eternal importance of Jewish festivals, Sabbath observance, and ritual purity. It also introduces a unique 364-day solar calendar, claiming it was the original system established by God, challenging the lunar calendar later adopted by Jewish communities. As Christianity grew, it began to separate itself from Judaism, especially in its outreach to Gentiles. Early Christian leaders, including the Apostle Paul, emphasized that salvation came through faith in Christ rather than strict adherence to Jewish laws. The Western Church, shaping its own identity, saw books like Jubilees and Maccabees as unnecessary remnants of an older system, one they wanted to move away from. But Ethiopia never made that break. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church traces its heritage back to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba through their son Menelik, preserving a deep connection to Jewish traditions. Ethiopian Christianity never felt the need to distance itself from Old Testament practices, and so these books remained a vital part of its sacred scriptures. The Maccabees, in particular, are highly revered in Ethiopia. While Western Christianity pushed them into the apocryphal section, Ethiopian Christians continued to honor them as powerful stories of faith, resistance, and divine intervention. The Maccabees were defenders of the Jewish faith against foreign oppression, and their legacy remains a source of inspiration in Ethiopia to this day. Another major reason these books were banned is that they were seen as a threat to Christian orthodoxy. The early church was in a period of transition and consolidation, and it was vital to establish a unified doctrine that could hold the faith together. As Christianity spread across the Roman Empire, different sects and interpretations began to arise, some of which were seen as heretical by the emerging Orthodox Church. Many of the books included in the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible present alternative theological views that the Western Church feared could confuse or divide the early Christian communities. For example, some of these texts offer different interpretations of the afterlife, divine judgment, and the role of angels. The Book of Enoch, for example, goes into great detail about the Watchers, the fallen angels, and the Nephilim, concepts that were seen as too speculative for the emerging Christian doctrine. The early church leaders wanted to ensure that the focus remained on Christ's message of salvation, not on what they saw as cosmic speculation about angels and heavenly realms. The goal was to create a unified faith that would be consistent across all Christian communities, and that meant excluding texts that offered alternative narratives or placed too much emphasis on the unseen spiritual world. This is why the Council of Nicaea and later church councils were so important. They helped solidify a Christian canon that was intended to guide believers toward a clear understanding of Christ's role in salvation history. But in doing so, they excluded books that explored the spiritual mysteries of the universe, focusing instead on the more immediate teachings of the gospel. Ethiopia, however, did not see these books as a threat to orthodoxy. In fact, the Ethiopian church believed that these texts deepened the understanding of God's cosmic plan, revealing insights into the angelic realm, the judgment of fallen angels, and the end times. For Ethiopia, these books were never meant to be speculative distractions, but were seen as complementary to the teachings of the New Testament, offering a fuller picture of the cosmic struggle between good and evil. Lastly, we can't overlook the role that colonialism played in marginalizing the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible. During the colonial era, particularly during Italy's invasion of Ethiopia in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and its sacred texts were seen as barriers to European dominance. For European colonial powers, Ethiopia's spiritual independence and its connection to ancient Christian traditions represented a form of resistance. Ethiopia was not a passive colony waiting to be civilized by European missionaries. It was a Christian nation with its own unique and ancient tradition that predated much of Europe's Christian history. The Ethiopian Orthodox Bible was seen as a symbol of defiance, as it tied Ethiopia directly to Israel and to the early Christian church, a connection that was spiritually powerful and politically inconvenient for European colonizers. By marginalizing or banning the Ethiopian Bible, colonial forces sought to weaken Ethiopia's spiritual identity and enforce Western religious views. In the same way that Ethiopia's physical resistance to colonial rule made it a symbol of African independence, its religious resistance through the preservation of its Orthodox Bible made it a spiritual stronghold. Ethiopia's unique Bible, filled with banned books and extra texts, was seen as a threat to the Western religious order, one that challenged the dominance of Catholicism and Protestantism. Do you think colonial forces were threatened by the spiritual independence of Ethiopia? Share your thoughts on how this played a role in the suppression of the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible. Now that we've explored why these books were banned, it's time to dive into the secrets these books hold. Each of the texts within the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible offers profound revelations about spiritual realms, ancient history, and God's divine plan. Let's take a deeper look at these banned books and what they reveal about the unseen world, prophecies, and even the end of days. You'll see why Ethiopia preserved them and why they're more important now than ever. Perhaps the most famous of the banned books, the Book of Enoch, takes us deep into the cosmic order and the heavenly realms. But this is not a simple vision of angels and demons. This book gives us a detailed look at the rebellion of angels, their interactions with humans, and their eventual judgment. The first section of Enoch, known as the Book of Watchers, begins with a startling revelation. 200 angels, known as the Watchers, were sent by God to watch over humanity. However, they fell from grace when they became infatuated with human women. These angels, led by Semjaza, defied God's command and descended to earth, where they took human wives and produced the Nephilim, a race of giants described as violent, corrupt, and destructive. What makes this story so powerful is that these fallen angels didn't just break God's laws, they also imparted forbidden knowledge to humanity. They taught humans the secrets of warfare, sorcery, cosmetics, and astrology, all seen as corruptions of God's natural order. This knowledge, passed down by the fallen angels, caused chaos on earth, and the Nephilim, the violent offspring of angels and humans, contributed to the moral decay of the world. Their violence and wickedness were so great that God decided to send the great flood to cleanse the earth of their influence. But before the flood, God sent the archangels Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel to intervene. Their task, to capture the rebellious watchers and bind them in the abyss, where they would remain until the day of judgment. These watchers, along with their offspring, were seen as so corrupt that God wiped them from the face of the earth, but their legacy continues to haunt humanity. Would you like us to do an entire video diving deeper into the Book of Enoch and the rebellion of the angels? Let us know in the comments. In another section of Enoch, known as the Book of Parables, we get a glimpse into the apocalyptic visions of Enoch, where he foretells the coming of a messianic figure called the Son of Man. This figure is portrayed as a divine judge who will execute judgment over both humans and angels. What's fascinating is how closely this Son of Man resembles Jesus Christ, who is referred to by the same title in the New Testament. Enoch's vision speaks of a final judgment where the wicked, including the fallen angels, are cast into a fiery abyss, while the righteous inherit eternal life. This section of Enoch paints a vivid picture of the cosmic battle between good and evil, where angels, demons, and humans all face their final judgment before the throne of God. One of the lesser-known sections of Enoch, the astronomical book, reveals the secrets of the cosmos. Enoch is shown the divine order of the stars, planets, and seasons, describing a solar calendar that is meant to keep humanity in alignment with the divine rhythm of creation. This section describes the movements of the heavenly bodies, which are controlled by angelic forces. The sun, moon, and stars don't just move at random. They follow a precise pattern established by God and enforced by his angels. The book even warns that humans must follow the solar calendar rather than the lunar one to remain in sync with God's creation. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church still follows this solar calendar today, a testament to its ancient roots in Enoch's revelations. Next, we turn to the Book of Jubilees. This is no ordinary history book. It's an in-depth retelling of biblical events from creation to the giving of the law at Sinai, but with a focus on the spiritual timeline of God's universe and the eternal importance of the law. At the heart of Jubilees is the concept that time itself is governed by an angelic calendar. God reveals to Moses on Mount Sinai that the true measure of time is not based on the lunar calendar, which was later adopted by the Israelites, but on a solar cycle. This is a 364-day year divided into periods of Jubilees, cycles of 49 years. The book emphasizes that adhering to this calendar is crucial to maintaining the order that God created. Why does this matter? According to Jubilees, the misalignment of time, using a lunar calendar instead of a solar one, leads humanity to fall out of sync with God's divine plan. The Ethiopian calendar, used to this day by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, follows this solar cycle. reflecting the belief that correct timekeeping is essential for remaining in alignment with the divine order. Could it be that we've been using the wrong calendar for centuries? Is the world out of sync with God's original plan? In addition to revealing the cosmic timeline, Jubilees tells us that angels were deeply involved in guiding the patriarchs long before Moses. Angels taught Adam, Noah, and Abraham how to observe the Sabbath, offer sacrifices, and follow purity laws. These laws weren't just for the Israelites. They were part of God's eternal law, revealed to the righteous from the very beginning. This close involvement of angels emphasizes that God's law is timeless. It predates the Mosaic covenant and remains unchanged. Even before Mount Sinai, God's law was known and followed by those in communion with Him, guided by the angels of His presence. The books of Maccabees are stories of heroic resistance and divine intervention. These texts tell the story of the Jewish revolt against foreign rulers, first in Judea under the Seleucid Empire and later in Egypt under the Ptolemaic dynasty. What's fascinating is that in the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, we have not just 2 but 3 books of Maccabees, each offering a unique perspective on faith under persecution. The first book of Maccabees tells the dramatic story of the Maccabean revolt, one of the most powerful moments in Jewish history. In 167 BC, the Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanes tried to erase Jewish identity, forcing the people to abandon their faith and adopt Greek customs. But Judas Maccabeus refused to let that happen. Leading a bold guerrilla war against the mighty Seleucid Empire, he miraculously reclaimed the temple in Jerusalem, restoring Jewish worship. This incredible victory is still honored today through the festival of Hanukkah, which celebrates the miracle of oil that burned for 8 days during the temple's rededication. The second book of Maccabees shifts the focus to those who sacrificed everything rather than betray their faith in God. One of the most heartbreaking stories is that of a mother and her 7 sons who were tortured for refusing to eat pork, a direct violation of Jewish law. One by one they faced brutal deaths, but each brother remained steadfast, declaring their belief in resurrection and eternal reward. This book also describes visions of angels and divine intervention in battle, reinforcing the idea that their victories were not just military successes, but acts of God. The third book of Maccabees takes us to Egypt, where the Jewish people faced intense persecution under King Ptolemy. The most dramatic moment comes when Ptolemy orders them to be crushed under the feet of drunken war elephants. But just as all hope seems lost, a miraculous twist changes everything. The elephants suddenly turn on the Egyptians, sparing the Jewish people from certain death. The Ascension of Isaiah is one of the most mystical and apocalyptic books in the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible. It describes the prophet Isaiah's extraordinary journey through the 7 heavens, where he witnesses the cosmic battle between good and evil and receives a prophecy about the coming of the Messiah. Guided by an angel, Isaiah ascends through the heavens, encountering powerful angelic beings, fallen spirits, and at last reaching the highest realm, the throne of God itself. The vivid descriptions of seraphim, cherubim, and other celestial beings give us one of the most detailed glimpses of the heavenly hierarchy in early Christian writings. But the most powerful moment of Isaiah's vision is the Messiah's descent. Isaiah sees the Son of God leaving the highest heaven, humbling himself to take on human form, living among people, and ultimately suffering at the hands of Satan's forces. Yet the vision doesn't end in tragedy. Isaiah witnesses the Messiah's triumph, his resurrection, his return to heaven, and his exaltation as the ruler of all creation. Thank you for watching Deep Bible Stories. If this look into the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible has opened your eyes to new insights, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with others.